Today we'll speak about a new kind of fabrications and allegations. We read it so many times in the Quran, قَالَ أَسَاطِيرُ الْأَوَّلِينَ. What does that mean? Whenever a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would come with prior prophets before him, people would be fascinated by the dhikr, by whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to that messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the easiest way for the people who refuse to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the miracles of that prophet is to say, you know what, this is not your word, you copied this from tales of the ancient. Older scriptures, older prophets, older mythology, whatsoever, this is not used, you just copied it and you come in here claiming you're a prophet to rule us and so on and so forth. And of course Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was the target of not only this but so many accusations and fabrications. Basically because the Quran itself in its perfect divine Arabic language was irrefutable. The national sport of Arabs was the Arabic language. That was the form of their pride, a very powerful language. They used to gloat about their ability to speak and remember poetry, and even they would gloat about their ancestries, how many members of their tribes that did this and that, and they put it in the form of poetry. So when you present people with that high scale of a language not only of someone who malaka jawami'ul kalim, like Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but even above and beyond that, the divine words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, it is fascinating. And we have in the seerah of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the infidels speaking about the Quran, and they're telling people, you know what, we listen to the words of priests, the kahana. We listen to the people of, as-suhar al-musha'awidin. We listen to the people who are crazy. أو عندهم مس من الشيطان. We listen to all kind of words. There's nothing like this. There's nothing like the Quran. They don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when it comes to that text, it's a divine text. So what is a man like Robert Spencer is saying this time about the Quran? He says, you know what? There is stories in the Quran that look like the stories in the Bible. So it's clear that Muhammad had knowledge of the Torah and the Gospels and copied it and authored it in the Quran, and that's why the Quran is nothing but just, again, tales of the ancient, asatir al-awwalin. But subhanallah, every time they make an allegation against Islam and Quran, when you research the refutal of it, you discover that they're not just wrong, but actually the answer of it proves them absolutely 180 degrees wrong. It's actually a miracle, a proof that this is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What do we mean by that? One of the historians who made a study about the stories, the biblical prophets in the Quran, and he said this had to be a revelation from God to the man called Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? He said at the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was not one man or one place on the face of the planet that had that entire knowledge of all the prophets of God like in the Quran. You have 25 names of the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, in Surah Al-Qasas and many places, to the limit even when I speak to people so they understand that Islam is the religion of the entire body of the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not just a separate religion. The word Muhammad is mentioned in the Quran how many times? Anyone knows? 4 times. The word Isa alayhi salam 25 times. The word Musa 131 times. So the historian said at the middle of 7th century, you had to have lived and spoke the language of people in the Sham area, in Egypt, places in North Africa, places in Northern Asia, in Europe, just to come up with some of the stories in the Quran, not even all of them. So how would an illiterate man in a harsh desert with no libraries, there's no universities, and he does not even read or write his own native language, does not speak Aramaic, does not speak Greek, of which at the time the predominant language of the Gospel scriptures, how did he come about to have that knowledge? Is that enough? SubhanAllah, they say it's Asatir al-Awwalin, and even Asatir al-Awwalin is not in that perfect detail like it is in the Quran. Other scholars came up with things that, subhanAllah, are scientific miracles that are not even in the Bible. One of them, and you would hear that name and I would urge you to research it, Maurice Bucaille. Who is Maurice Bucaille? He is a French scientist who had extensive expertise in the decay of mummies and ancient bodies and corpses and things like that. So the body of what was believed to be Ramses, the Pharaoh, and actually I was a young child and I seen it with my own eyes. SubhanAllah, you see the hair, you see the nails, you see the dye of the hair still there, as if it's a dry body with no decay whatsoever. But they started to see decay in it. So they took him to the leading authority in France to try to stop the decay and preserve the body. He did, subhanAllah, many x-rays and imaging and whatever that he could of analysis, and he said to his assistant, who happened to be Muslim, I believe Senegalese, that I have the discovery of the 20th century. He said what? He said, what you believe is Ramses the second, or whatever the Egyptologists believe, this is Moses' Pharaoh. This is the Pharaoh of Moses. He said, how would you know that? He said, first of all, I found sea salt traces in his entire tissue. So that body was immersed in seawater. Number one. Number two, when they looked at the body, mummies, they used to mummify him like that. When they unwrapped the thighs, all of a sudden his left hand sticks up like that. So that proves two things. First of all, that the body was left for some time till it got stiff before they actually mummified it. And the last position of that pharaoh was sticking his hand like that. That's number one. So the last position was like this, and that is a body that was left to the limit that it got stiff. The third thing, he said that man died by a huge amount of water falling on him and killing him instantly. How would he know that? He said he found broken ribs. They're broken. But the only way to have them broken is if that you had an axe or a rock that would hit him so hard to break the ribcage bones. Yet the skin has no traces whatsoever of scars or cuts or big hit or anything like that. The only possible scenario where your ribcage would be broken without any traces on the skin is if a huge amount of water fell on you. It's so heavy it would break the ribcage, but it would not cut the skin. This is the Pharaoh of Moses. But the Muslim guy knew his deen a little bit. He said, but that's not breaking news to the Muslim. He said, why? He said, it's written with us in Surah Yunus. And the ayah is, inshallah, I want to give you the number so you can read it for yourself. It is number, Surah Yunus is chapter 10, and the verse number is 92. What happened? When the Pharaoh seen the water, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala parted the Red Sea and two mountains of water, and then he's seen it, and he sees Musa alayhi salam being saved, and the mountains of water about to fall upon him. That's it. He's about to die. This is the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can split and part an entire sea like that. He knew that this is the truth. So he said, no, now I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept. But he told them, the only thing that we will save, we're not going to save your soul because you're dying. We'll save your body to make an example of it to the people who would come after you. They found his body. Of course, you know where this come from? Can anyone guess? If you look at the pictures, they carry the shield with the left hand and the spear with the right hand. So when the water was falling upon him, immediately the first reaction is to protect himself from the water like that. So they found the body in a stiff condition when he was holding the hand like that. And they had to tie it so hard to bring it down, but as soon as you take the upping, the stiff body will come back to the normal thing. How would Prophet Muhammad ﷺ know a fact like that people just discovered, subhanallah, in the 80s? Maurice Bouquet was astonished that how is it possible? Prophet Muhammad ﷺ doesn't know hieroglyphs. He did not meet anyone from Egypt to explain it to him. Even no one in the world knew this. Still, he discovered it himself, and he thought it's a big discovery. Unless this is a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who saved Musa alayhi salam and parted the Red Sea. Started to read the Quran, and subhanallah, he accepted Islam. So the people who tell you tales of the ancient, he copied it from somewhere else. Subhanallah, look at the pinpoint details.